So this is how you deal with frets that are either lifting or completely off on a Parker guitar. It's a little difficult, but it's very doable, and you use readily available products. If you're used to dealing with frets, you're going to have most of these. So let's go over what you're going to need. Start with a 14-inch radius block, available from StewMac. Also from StewMac, just a straight edge. We call this a fret rocker. Now this is a cam clamp. It's got cork on each end, and it's a flip lever clamp. Any kind of clamp is going to work. I prefer these because they don't leave a mar in the finish. You're going to need some Scotch tape or some masking tape. We use the Scotch 3M brand. It's got the right amount of adhesive. It's thick enough. Don't use cheap tape. Use a fairly good tape. You're going to need, we have Imperial Wet or Dry 2500 grit sandpaper. We have some 600 grit, and then we have some 400 grit with a sticky vacuum. We have a diamond crowning file. This one is an 150 grit. We have a side bevel file. This operation can be done by hand, but we like to use that to keep it consistent. Here I have some Zap Thin Super Glue, very thin viscosity. Some accelerator for that, although I don't typically use it. A little bit of acetone, some Q-tips, an X-Acto knife, and just a little flat block for sanding. And that's the tools that you'll need to do this job. So let's start. What I'm going to do first, I'm actually going to take some of these frets off of this guitar, okay? And then we're going to put them right back in the same spot. That one I took completely off. This one I just lifted the edge. So it's two different kinds of repair. So now, when the fret is completely off like this, you really need to have the fret that came off. And you want to put it right back in its original position. And there's a way to do that. Now, if you look at the fret, can you zoom on this?
Yes. It's not super clear, but
when you look at the fret, you're going to see two grooves in the bottom of that fret. And that's going to help us place this, because the glue that glues these frets on conforms to the bottom surface of the fret. So those two little grooves are going to be in there, and you're going to be able to feel them. If you're running this fret side to side, you can feel it kind of find a spot that it wants to catch. And so once I put it there, then I push side to side to see it doesn't want to go anywhere. I know I'm on the grooves. And I do that to both sides of that fret. And so now I know that fret,
where's the 5161? Where's the 5161?
That fret's in the right position. Now we want to get it positioned going this way and this way. I'll do this side first. I'm holding this straight edge, or you can use this block, something hard that's at least 3 frets wide, so that we can actually place it up against those other 2 frets and then slide this fret in until it hits. So, and you got to remember that you got to keep this thing in position going all directions at the same time. Slide that over, check this side, and then just run your fingers over here and see if you feel it. You shouldn't be able to feel it any differently than you do on any of the other positions.
Where's the 5161? Where's the 5161?
Double check. Spend your time checking everything. So right now, it's not wiggling side to side. I've got it placed here. Here's where we start fixing it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this super glue and drop a very tiny little drop right there on the edge. Come over here and do the same thing over on this edge. What happens is that super glue runs up underneath. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to run a bead all the way down and let that slide its way up underneath. And I'm going to take one of these Q-tips very lightly. Don't push your fret out of position now. That would be a bad thing. And then I got most of the excess up, and I'm going to take that 14-inch radius caul and put the edge right over that fret. Then I'm going to clamp it into position. Very light pressure. You don't have to jam it. You don't want to mark the back of your finish here. You just want to hold that fret securely down in the position that it's in. And then I'd say give it about 3 or 4 minutes to dry, and you should be okay. I prefer, if I have to do frets, I do them one at a time. It's better. You're going to do more precise work if you're doing it one at a time. I'm not going to let this sit for very long because super glue sets very fast. That's about all you need for the clamping. It's in the position it needs to be in. Now, can you zoom on this again?
Yeah.
All right, on this next one, I want them to see what it looks like when this, you might have to shift positions, but when I put this drop of glue here, see how it soaks and runs up underneath?
Yeah, that's on.
You were able to get that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's very important. That's letting you know that it's gone all the way through and underneath, and you see I'm rubbing off the excess. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to clamp that down. This one I just didn't have to find the position. It was in its correct position. And then just clamp it down and let it sit. When we're done with that, we'll start cleaning up the fingerboard and checking the levels on the frets. If they're not level, I'm going to level them anyway just to show you how to do it. Show you it is possible on a Parker.
And action.
Okay, so now we've glued these frets. Now what we want to do is make sure that they're fairly level. And if you've never done this before, you can take this straight edge and you have to make sure it's a fine ground straight edge. You can't just use any old ruler and rock it. And I can feel that this fret is a little bit high because it will rock. It should just lay straight across. But if one fret's high, you can see how it's going to bounce one way or the other. Move to the next fret, it bounces a little bit. So these two frets, they're a little high. So what I'm going to do is, first thing I'm going to do is actually get some of the paper on this thing. So I'm going to go over here and break
Action.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to level out the frets that have a little bit of rock. You can review that. It's bounce, that's not good. It's got to be firm. There's only a slight bit of rock, but you can assume that you're going to have to do that. This is actually a flat machine and then coated with diamond leveling pad, which we like to use. I'm going to use it a little bit just to kind of take some of the long effort out of this. And you can see that I've got a flat spot on here and very little touching here, flat spot, very little touching here. So it's really just working the frets that we just glued down. It tells me I probably could have put a little bit more pressure on what I was gluing down than what I did. And now, since I didn't show you this as part of the tools, because it's a very expensive little tool, I'm just going to take my radius block, put some of that 400 grit sticky back paper on it, and I'm going to use that to level. So once I'm satisfied that it's level, and the way I can do that is continually check my fret rockers, and it's almost there. This one's a little bit higher than the others, so I'll work it first. You can work the fret individually and then work it into the rest of the frets. It's the most efficient way to do it. And you don't want to have to go all the way up and down, because then you're going to have to crown all the way up and down. You just want to make sure that the tops of these frets are leveled out amongst all of the ones just to their immediate front or back. Check it with my fret level. Okay, that's level. That's level. That's got a little bit of rock. That's got a little bit of rock. So I've worked this side mostly. Now I need to come across to the other side. And you can see it doesn't take very long. It doesn't take much. And the least amount of grinding you can do, the quicker the job will go. have to review this video in the long run. Crowning is the bulk of the work in this when you have to do this. Okay, we're level in both edges, level in the center, a little more right there. Take your time and do this part of the job right. It's the heart and soul of the Barker guitar is how well they play. Level. So I'm good. I really haven't done any damage too much out to the sides. The next thing to do to be prudent is take your tape. I have to find that. Where did that roll go? Pause.
And you're on.
Alright. So let's take a little bit of this tape, lay it right up against the edge of the fret. And what we're doing really is just protecting the fretboard from any damage. It's very easy to slip when you're crowning these frets. You slip on this carbon graphite and scratch it. It's not something you can just steal wool out. So you want to keep your work surface very clean. Be very careful about what you're doing. And these Parkers are an investment worth taking care of. It's worth taking care when you're working on them. So now that I've got the surface that I want to work masked off, I'm going to take the crowning file and do a light crown on these. Now, no one should be doing this if they don't know what they're doing, crowning frets. So I'm going to assume that you know how to dress your frets. Otherwise, you need to take it to somebody. If this is your first time, you don't even want to attempt this. I'm taking my time and I'm being very careful. Just taking that little flat out. Rotate this into the right light so that I can see the little line to crown to. You know, I'm working it down until there's the reflection that I'm looking at just barely Okay. Now this is a diamond crowning burr. It's very expensive. You can use a standard crowning burr. It will work. It just takes a little bit more sanding after you're done, and that's what we're going to see next. Okay, pause.
And you're on.
So now, this is the 400 with the sticky backing that I had before. And there's two different crown radiuses on these files. One's a narrow and one's a wide. You want to use the narrow. So I stick the paper onto my crowning burr, and I use that to actually sand the frets. This is how you get it back to the original Parker brand new fret finish so that you won't feel your crowning work. You want to take any kind of marks out of that fret with this 400 before you move on to any other grit. And I pretty much take it off. You can see the black line it leaves on the paper. Move that black line over, move on to the next fret, and then I actually, on the very last one, I go back over and give them another brush up with the cleanest paper. Once I'm done with the 400, I'm going to grab the 2500. Tear me off a small, manageable chunk because this doesn't have sticky on the back of it, so I have to hold it on the crowning burr. This pretty much polishes the spread up as if it were brand new. Again, one fret, move it over a little bit, get you some fresh paper on the fret, move over and do the next one. And again, I'm going to go back and give it some more with another fresh section. Just as a precaution. And a little wipe off with a clean towel, and the fretwork is pretty much done. Now you have to clean the fingerboard. So I'm going to peel the tape off. And the reason I do this last, even though it's tempting to do it first, you want the glue to have as much time to harden as you can before you come in here and try and clean the fingerboards off. So we're going to use acetone, which will soften this glue up if the glue hasn't hardened really hard yet. So you want to catch it about 15 minutes after you started. Come back and clean this up. And you don't want to get sloppy in this part of the operation. You just want to get a little bit in the Q-tip. Walk it over there. You can see it getting moist. And then I'm using, this is a wooden Q-tip too, by the way. And I'm using the wood end. You can see I'm coming back after I've softened the glue up just a touch. I'm using the edge of the wood up against the fret to really clean it. And that'll take a lot of the glue that's softened but not liquid yet off of the fingerboard and prevent you from having to run too much acetone into it. You don't want to put very much acetone on this fingerboard because it will run right up underneath the fret if it's too wet, or if you didn't get enough fret up underneath there, and it'll soften your work and you'll have to do it again. And this is a lot of work, so you don't want to have to do it more than once. And so I'm basically just rubbing that until that super glue dissolves and comes right off. Taking a fresh cotton every once in a while, just cleaning that fingerboard up. The last thing you could do is just take a little bit of a cotton cloth and wipe the whole board down. But we've cleaned off the fret and the fretwork, and that's pretty much restored to playing condition. Now, let's keep going. Here's another little trick. If you've had a fret pop off, there might be other ones in here, and I don't know if there is on this fingerboard. But one of the things that I tend to like to do is I hold this, my fret crowning burr, not flat side but long side up, and I tap the fret, and I get a kind of a ringy sound. So The note's changing in tone, but it's still kind of bright. Now let me show you what it'd sound like if there was a fret loose. That X-Acto knife is all. There we go. Let's say this fret end is loose here. I'm going to pop it up. Now I have a loose fret end. You can see it's up. If I'm tapping these frets, dead sounding. Can you hear the difference? Sounds like wood. That means that fret end.
Please call the operator. Nick, please call the operator.
Just a dead sound. That means you need to glue the end of that fret down. So check them all. If you're going to do this work and you got all the tools out, make sure that there's no other gaps or any loose spots that you have to glue up.